Hey guys, it's ArtDude47 and welcome back for another devlog. This time I do want to try doing things differently than I did last video. I didn't love the way the last one turned out, so I'm going to try to do more traditional devlog this time where I kind of talk to you about features I'm adding, show you the progress, and show you anything interesting that pops up while I'm doing that. So with that being said, I've already added a few things to kind of make the game work more. What I'm trying to do is solidify the gameplay loop this time around. So what I want to show you is what I've got so far, which you can see I've done some work on the UI. Here I've got what I'm calling the action panel. This is where buttons will populate for you to make the player do things. This is a stats panel. These stats will likely change. And then this is the date. And so I've added some features that use these, so I'm just going to play it and show you what I've got so far. Alright, so I've got the game playing here. You can see that a date populates, some different stat values populate, and I'm actually going to stop it and restart it because there's something I want to show you here with the dialogue as well. You'll notice there's no typewriter effect. It just pops up with the dialogue here. So I wanted to make it so that both are possible. So if you take a look now, I just added a little enumerator that in each dialogue you select if it's going to be instantaneous or typewriter. So now you can see if I study, it's a typewriter. And also my stats are affected. And that is basically all I've got so far that I've added. I'm thinking I do want to make it still more like Tokimeki Memorial. So what I'm going to do in the next segment is probably show you a little bit of gameplay from that game in case you're not familiar, and then we're going to work on solidifying it. So we'll get into that next. Alright, so here we are in Tokimeki Memorial. So this is what the launch screen looks like. I'm in the emulator, by the way. I think I mentioned, but this game actually never came out in English. So this is a fan translation that was semi-recently finished. This is the Super Nintendo version. It's not considered the best version, but apparently it was the most translator-friendly for a fan translation. So this is what we've got. So I'll get into it. Start the game. And we'll start a new one. So then it's going to ask what your first and last name is and your nickname. If you just enter, it will give you the default. So we'll go ahead and do that. I've noticed for the nickname, Buddy is not the default. It actually must have a set number of nicknames and it just gives you a random one, but it looks like your first and last name are always the same. Then you have a default birthday and blood type. Since my version will be similar to Tokimeki Memorial, but basically I wanted to make it take place in an American high school. We won't ask blood type. That's something that, isn't as important in America, so we'll go through that. Yes, that's all okay. And then it's going to ask for Shiori Fujisaki. She is the main character, the best girl, the best ending. So she's who your character wants to end up with canonically. And so again, we'll just let her birthday and blood type be default for the purposes of this video. And so then it comes in, it shows a background picture, which we haven't really gotten into in our game yet, but we'll have a background that changes as well. It's got the date bar, and then it's got the dialogue box. It also has this scrolling background, which I quite like, and I may find a way to work it into the game. I'm not sure. We will start with the prologue just because I'm assuming you all haven't seen this. And so it's basically saying I'm starting my first year of private high school. It's a prestigious school that I didn't think I'd get into, but I worked really hard because I wanted to be in the same school as my crush, Shiori Fujisaki, is basically what he's saying here. So he passed the entrance test, feels really good about it because the girl he has a crush on is also going to the same school. And here she is. Her name's Shiori Fujisaki. We've known each other since elementary school. She lives right next door. Although I'm not sure when I first noticed, I've had this huge crush on her. And so it's basically just setting up that background that this is who you want to end up with. This is who your character likes. And this is the main character. And so she's glad we got into the same school. And you're kind of hitting on her here, just telling her she always gets good test scores. It's no wonder she got in. And now we'll go to the entrance ceremony. So she leaves to go meet up with her mom. And then we end up in the classroom. Entrance ceremony's over. And so you find out you're in the same class as Shiori. And then you ask her if she'll walk home with you. She's kind of iffy about it. She doesn't know. And you tell her you can't remember the way back. Then she says she doesn't have much of a choice, but you'll notice her character sprite is actually smiling here. This is something that is done very well in this game, where the character sprites' faces will emote based on how they're feeling. So they can frown or look angry or things like that. Alright, and then we get to talking to him. What are you smiling about? Oh, nothing. What's this guy getting all buddy-buddy for? This is the only male character that you interact with. Well, one of two, actually. This is Yoshio, and he's a big part of the game mechanics. Basically, Yoshio knows all there is to know about the girls in school. And so when you meet a new girl or you need information about a girl, you call Yoshio, and he can give you their phone number, he can tell you what they like, things like that. And so he says, notice you're talking to that girl, what's your deal? And you just say, oh, well, we've been friends since we were kids, that's it. And he wants you to know, to tell him what you know about her, so that way he can add it to his log. See, he's been taking down notes about all the cute girls at the school. Sounds kind of weird to me, man, but hey, fine, whatever. And so then we tell him about Shiori. And we get a little bit of information about her here. She likes classical music. That's something to remember for gift givings, things like that. And so this is the other male character that you interact with. This is a rich kid. He's a jerk. So he's saying everybody's heard of his company, his grandfather's company. Everybody's heard of him. And so this intro takes a little bit of time, but I kind of wanted to show it to you all to show you how the game's set up, and then we'll just do a couple days of gameplay. And so this game doesn't actually have the ability to skip this typewriter dialogue, so we definitely want that. And we've already worked it into our game. Alright, so then we go to the front gate because that's where we're supposed to meet up with Shiori, but out in the hallway we run into somebody. Looks like it's Ray again. And he's just being a rich jerk, basically. You got dirt on my uniform, blah blah blah. My family is wealthier than yours, so don't get the wrong idea. We can afford a new uniform. So then we meet up with Shiori at the front gate again. And this is where they tell you about the school legend. This kind of sets up the whole story. So there's a big tree. And apparently if a girl confesses her love for a boy under the tree, they'll be happy together forever. And so that kind of sets up the goal for the game. You want to get with Shiori and have her confess her love to you under the tree at the end of high school. And so in Japan, this game takes place over 3 years. And so you're playing through the game for the full 3 years of high school, and then it ends on graduation. And you're ranked on a couple of things. Your academic scores, they'll tell you what kind of college you're getting into, or if you're going straight into the workforce, things like that. And then, of course, the girls that you get. Alright, and so this is kind of where the gameplay begins. So you'll notice we've got up here stats: health, art, looks, culture, fitness, spirit, logic, insight, and stress. Now I didn't want to copy all of these stats because I think some of these don't translate that well from Japanese. Like spirit, for example, and culture. I'm not sure an English player would look at those and know exactly what those reference or how you would increase those. So I think we'll get away from something like that. But you'll see your characters saying, I wonder what I should focus on starting tomorrow, because you choose an action and then your character focuses on it all week, and so you can only change an action weekly. And then we've got our actions over here. One thing that I don't love about this game is that there's no type of tooltip to tell you, hey, this is what that action is. You have to be able to tell by the icon here. But what we're going to do is we are going to focus on working out, because basically I think we're going to play until I meet a girl, and I think this is a quick way to do it. So I'll click working out. So it plays this little animation as every day passes, and then when you hit Sunday, you get what should I do today, because Sundays are special. You can go on dates, you can call people on Sunday. We're going to work out because we're just trying to meet a new girl as quickly as possible, so I can show you that. Now it's Sunday night. What are we going to focus on all week? And we'll go ahead and focus on working out. And so it plays this animation. You'll notice the stats changing based on if you get the good or the bad animation. Different things happen. Different stat values, increases and decreases. And they've just got that little animation where it turns blue if it increases and turns like that pinkish red if it decreases. Okay, so then we go to the local park. I'm beat, running in the morning sure feels good. And then Nozomi says good morning to us. Oh, good morning. She's talking to me like she already knows me. You jogged here too. Yes, I did. Same goes for you, I take it? I do a 50K run every morning, never miss a day. And so as you can see, she's like a fit workout girl, and the reason we've met her so far is because we've been training our fitness stat. So the girls you meet are based on the stats you raise. 50K every morning. Do you go to Kirigami High School, Kirameki? Yep, sure do. Name's Nozomi Kiyokawa. And so basically you go through, she introduces herself to you. She's one of the top swimmers in high school. Figured she'd be a real snob, but she's nicer than I imagine. And so she asks, maybe you could go for a run together. And then she gives you the rest of her juice. And your character This is part of what makes the character real, I think. It's not just a reflection of you. He has his own thoughts, and so here he thinks, hey, it's almost like I kissed her indirectly. How lucky. And then it just continues through the week. And then we'll do one last action before we get back into Unity, which is now I could show you if we make a phone call. You'll notice we don't have her phone number yet, so we call Yoshio. Hello, can I ask who's calling? Oh, it's a girl speaking. This is Hideo Fuji. May I speak to Yoshio, please? You want to talk to my brother? And this is a cool setup because next year, Yoshio's younger sister will start attending a school, and she is also a dateable candidate. So you could only talk to her on the phone this year. She's younger than you, so she doesn't come to your school yet. So then you call Yoshio, you tell him who it is. He, good to hear from you. You said you'd help me out with the girls, right? And so then you can do ask about how the girls would rate me, or ask about different date spots. We'll go ahead and do the how the girls would rate me right now. So then he shows you this. It shows all of the girls you've met and how they rate you. You can see you start fairly low. And so then we can ask for information about the girls. In this case, we'll do Nozomi, since we don't have her phone number, but we do have Shiori's. He's flipping through his notes to get it. And now you get a page about her. So birthday's December 3rd. She's a Sagittarius, blood type's A. Gives you her measurements, her club that she participates in, and then some notes about her. And this also unlocks her phone number, so that way you can call her in the future. And so I think for now, I'm going to try to pretty well one-to-one replicate these systems. And then we may differentiate the game from there once I get everything working. The only difference, like I said, I do want to write it from an American high school point of view, so I will set it up so both Saturday and Sunday give you a weekend option, and we may need to balance around that a little bit, but we'll get into that once we start getting more to the balancing stage of development. For now, we'll head back into Unity and we'll get started with this. Alright, back in Unity, you'll likely notice some things have already changed. So what I did was I went ahead and I made some new stats to kind of match with Tokimeki Memorial better. I made them basically all the ones I could think of that I thought would fit in an American high school. So we've still got health, humanities, science, we've got art, athletics, charms, appearance, and stress. I also went ahead and made some temporary buttons. This obviously will not be any kind of final artwork, but just to signify what they stand for. And so if we go ahead and play, we'll wait for it to load real quick. You can see what I've got going on so far. Alright, so we've got Monday, September 5th. You'll notice I put in a few random values. None of these mean anything. I was just doing that for testing, so don't worry about those. And we get what should we focus on this week. And so now I can click on one of the buttons to choose the focus for the week. In the future, I will add tooltips to kind of take care of the problem I was talking about on Tokimeki Memorial, where you can't just quickly look at the buttons and figure out what they're supposed to mean. So I think tooltips will help solve that. We'll get those, but we will study humanities for this. So you study extra hard, you feel like you really learned something, and you can see it's kind of going through the week. Now we're on Saturday, so it's the weekend. What should I do today? Now we will go ahead and study science for this one. We get Sunday. Again, it's the weekend. What should I do today? We'll do humanities. You can see our stats changing. But yeah, the main thing I wanted to show you is now if you see Monday, September 12th, again, what should we focus on for the week? If I click it, it will go through the days with a little bit of delay in between. And it's a delay that I can choose how long it will be. And so if you could just imagine, some sort of animation would play right here based on what you chose. So in this case, your character might be reading a book, something like that. to make it a little more interactive. So with that being done, I kind of have the basic gameplay loop going on here. And so I think I'm going to quickly jump into the whiteboard, and I'll just show you real quickly how I've kind of got this being done. So I'll show you how I've got that being done. We'll take a look. I'll make kind of a flow chart again, show you what scripts I have interacting with each other, and then we'll jump quickly into the code and just take a look at it as well. Alright, so let's go ahead and jump into the whiteboard. Alright, so I've kind of tried to make it so I've got a bunch of different manager scripts that handle a bunch of things. So for this example, I've got a time manager, a UI manager, what I've called the scheduler, and then player stats. And these are all working together to make the loop. So the time manager obviously keeps track of what day it is. And it handles the movement of time. That is the basic use for the time manager. So it keeps track of the day, it'll display it to the UI, and then when time is supposed to move, like when it goes through the week doing an activity, it will also handle that. UI manager, all it does is updates the UI. But that way, instead of having to keep track of all of the UI elements in every single script that may change the UI, instead, for example, from the time manager, I would call ui.instance.updateDate, and then the UI manager would update the date on the UI panel, rather than the time manager having to have references to every single panel that it would update. The scheduler right now holds all the actions that can take place. Displays them to the player, and then it handles the clicks of the actions. The reason I called it the scheduler is because in the future it will also handle scheduling dates with NPCs and events that may happen automatically on a specific date and time. And then lastly, player stats, exactly what it sounds, holds the stats. Again, with it being a manager that holds the stats, say for example the scheduler had an event that was clicked that needs to update the player stats, I would just call player stats .instance .update stats, and then it would update those stats without having to have a reference to each one again. So that's kind of how I'm handling it. That's kind of how I'm doing it. Now I will go ahead and jump quickly into the code of those classes and just show you how that goes. Starting here with the player stats. So this one's pretty easy. We've got the instance, since it's going to be a singleton, first name, last name, birthday, and then all the integers for the stat values. And then just one function that just instantiates the instance for the singleton here. So that one's pretty easy. Scheduler as well is pretty easy. We've got the instance because this is a singleton as well. It's got a list of events. Those are action scriptable objects. And it's got a list of actions that are also action scriptable objects, On awake, it just instantiates the singleton pattern again. Then we have check for event, which currently isn't used because I haven't created any events, so I've got it commented out. This will change once we've created some events, so I'll collapse that for now. It doesn't matter. Check for actions does matter. It makes a temporary list of actions, and it cycles through each of the actions and adds them to the temporary list. So right now we don't need the temporary list. It's kind of not being utilized, but in the future, just in case I create actions that can only be done at certain times or on certain dates, For example, I know phone calls will only be available on weekends. This will add what actions are available. So in the future, this will be needed, and that's why I've already implemented it. And then as you can see, we just call the UI manager to display the actions available to the player rather than having a reference to all the action buttons here. Alright, so with that being said, we'll go into the action scriptable object because this one is used in the scheduler, but it's just a scriptable object. It's just got a name for the action, what time it's available in, which currently isn't being used. That's just in the future if I want to add different time blocks throughout a single day, but I don't think I will. What date it happens on, this is more for if it's an event, and then if it's only available on weekends, there's a bool there. Like I said, like I kind of hinted at with the phone call feature, that'll only be available on weekends, so I can just click that bool, and if it's not a weekend, it won't display. Then it's got a list of, or an array of dialogues. That's basically the dialogue that'll be displayed when you execute the action. And then it's got a list of effects for the player stats. Then it's got a method execute, which gets called when you click the action button, and all that does is affect the stats and then display one of its dialogues randomly. Alright, so then quickly we'll get into the UI manager. It just has a reference to all the different UIs in the game. So we've got one for the dialogue, one for the stats, the actions, and the date, and it just has all of its different UI components. Again, this is a singleton, so we create the instance there. Then we call the update stats at the start. This is just to actually update the stats UI, so that way the UI affects or accurately displays what the player's stats are. And then we have this public function, which will do that anytime any other script calls it. In case the player stats get changed, this will update them. And then we've got that display actions, and all it does is it takes an action list, which is up here. It's a list of buttons. And if the button is on the action list, if it contains the action, the same action that the button does, it makes it interactable, and if it doesn't, then it's not interactable. Then I've got destroy actions, which currently just makes all actions not interactable. Alright, so then we just get into the time manager. This one's a little more complex and a little not clean right now. I need to work on cleaning it up a little bit. But we've got the day, month, year. Day will always start at 1 and just count upwards, whereas the month, the game's currently starting in September 1983. Is weekend, current date, spend day dialogue, and spend weekend dialogue. So those are dialogues for what will appear to the player, like, hey, it's the weekend, what should we do today? Again, we're going to set up the singleton, and then just to start the game out, we call update day and then start the game. So update day, all it does is it calculates the current date, and it does that here with the date time, which takes a year, month, and then day. It's starting on the 5th currently because that's a Monday, and then what we do is we add days, the day minus 1. Since the day starts at 1, minus 1 is 0, so it doesn't add any days, but then the next day it adds days, and you can add as many days as have passed, and the date time will take care of what day it actually is. And then we just set the date time text here of the UI manager to get formatted date, which is a method that I've got here. And all it does is changes the current date to a string that's more readable. Alright, so then we've got the start game, which calls the spend day dialog for the dialog system. It starts that dialog, and then it checks for any actions available. And then what happens is when an action is selected, it will call move time. If it's weekend, it'll start this coroutine move time weekend, otherwise it starts the weekday. So we've got weekday first, and it cycles through 5 days, Monday through Friday. The day increments, it executes the action, it updates the stats for the UI, and then it waits for 1 second currently. I need to make that a variable, and then it'll be changeable, and then we update the day. At the end of those 5 days, then weekend should be true, so it'll call the weekend dialog, and then it'll check for actions again. This time, once the action's clicked, it will know it's a weekend, so it'll do this one, which will increase the day, it'll execute the action, it'll update the stats, and then it'll check if it's still the weekend, and if it's not, it'll set this to false. It'll wait 1 second and then update the day. If it's weekend, then it's going to set the dialogue to the weekend dialogue. Otherwise, it's going to do the weekday dialogue, and everything starts all over again. So that's a basic rundown of the code. That's just, let me know how you feel about that. That's how I'm handling it this video. That may not be permanently how I show the code. I may do less code, more code, depending on what people like. But that's basically how it's working, and that's kind of the basic gameplay loop taken care of. Next, we're going to have to start looking at either adding some characters or cleaning up the current code. I'm not sure what I'm going to look at next, but I think this is a good place to go ahead and stop this episode, so I appreciate you all for watching. Let me know how you feel about the format. If you have any questions in the comment, please feel free to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.